So we often hear about love languages. But what if I told you that they go way deeper than you think? Your Mars and Venus placements in your astrology chart don't just show you how you're shaped by love, they actually reveal why you love the way that you do. When you actually put these two together, you unlock an entirely new level of self-understanding, one that gives you deeper insights into your relationship patterns, how you attract, and it also shows you exactly how you can step into a more authentic way of loving and expressing. So this video, what I'm going to do is focus on exploring Mars and Venus through the lens of evolutionary astrology. And this is going to help us understand the nature of our attraction style, right? What are our karmic patterns that we tend to express and are working through? And it also helps us understand how our love languages are actually being expressed. So by the end of this video, hopefully you'll be able to have a better understanding of the Mars and Venus connection to our love languages. And with this type of knowledge, it can help us be able to transform the way that we experience and express ourselves within the context of a relationship. So if this also resonates with you, don't forget we've got our masterclass that's happening on the 2nd of March. I'm going to leave a link down in the description below because we're going to be exploring these themes of Mars and Venus in this masterclass. So why does Mars and Venus matter? Well, Venus reveals to us in our love language the way that we actually feel valued in relationships. It actually shows you how we go about attracting connection. It's like the way that we feel loved. Mars, on the other hand, is more of our pursuit style. So it shows us how we go about expressing our love and the way that we go about expressing our desires and acting upon our passions. So it is literally how we show our love. When you look at these two planetary systems in a connection with each other, you see this symbiotic relationship between the dynamic tension of attraction, magnetism, and the way that we actually go about acting upon those desires. Now, if you take it even one step further, and you look at it through the lens of evolutionary astrology, these Mars-Venus placements are not just random. They actually reveal to us deep evolutionary patterns of emotional growth. They can actually show you how the early life imprinting and conditioning when you were growing up has shaped the way that you see relationships. So if you're struggling with understanding attraction, or if you're struggling with understanding how you express your desires and what they are, the birth chart actually reveals these patterns pretty well. Now, you can also find yourself, because it goes even deeper than this, you can also find yourself understanding the aspects that these planets have together. Like, for instance, the opposition or the square can provide us with deeper understanding of the types of challenges that you face, but the trines and sextiles can also reveal why there's a natural ability to express harmony, but also the need to recognize that you need to not let it just become comfortable, right? And just rely on that. That's what tends to happen with trines and sextiles. So you can see here, by understanding Mars and Venus in your chart, it's not just about what your love language is, although that's an incredibly important layer to understand, and how you actually attract and want love, but they also reveal to us the deep patterns of emotional growth that we are embarking on in this lifetime. And so that's what I mean when I say that if you put these two together, you're unlocking a whole new level of self-understanding. So I want to take this one step further, and I want to actually go ahead and show us how these types of relationship patterns through our love language can be associated with the different types of signs, and what's the difference between, say, Mars in Cancer and, say, Venus in Cancer. Okay, so let's go ahead and break down the love languages and astrology. So we'll start off by looking at words of affirmation. And the signs that I would naturally associate this would be Venus in Gemini, Venus in Sagittarius and Libra, Mars in Gemini, Aquarius, and Virgo. And so words of affirmation are you connect through words, ideas, and mental stimulation. So an example we could take a look at is Venus in Gemini loves engaging in conversations, deep talks, and reassurance in words. But if Mars is in Virgo, they may overanalyze love and struggle to fully express their emotions. Let's take a look at the second love language, right? Acts of service. So this would be like Venus in Virgo, Capricorn, and Taurus, Mars in Cancer, Virgo, and Capricorn. And so acts of service are expressed through love is effort, right? Attraction speaks louder than words. So an example that we could use here is like Venus in Capricorn values commitment, stability, while Mars in Cancer expresses its love through nurturing actions like cooking and caretaking. You're starting to get the picture here. So if we take a look at the third quality, we can look at the quality of time. This would be Venus in Pisces, Scorpio or Cancer, Mars in Taurus, Scorpio or Pisces. And so quality time means love, means deep presence and emotional connection. Examples that we can think of over here, Venus in Pisces seeks that emotional depth, but Mars in Scorpio might struggle with the emotional control and the need for deep connection, but are also fearing that vulnerability, right? That desire for wanting that and wanting to establish that, but also fearing that vulnerability. Another love language that we can explore is physical touch, right? Think of Venus in Aries, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio, whereas Mars in Cancer, Leo, and Aries could play out in this language. So physical touch is touch through passion, physical closeness, like wanting to drive and feel connection. Example could be like Mars in Aries expresses their love through spontaneous affection, while Venus in Taurus craves that slow and sensual bonding experience. And I think the final love language that we can take a look at here is receiving gifts. Right? Think of Venus in Leo, Venus in Taurus, Libra, Mars in Capricorn, Mars in Leo, and Taurus. So an example of how receiving gifts work in our love language is that love is expressed, is about appreciation through tangible expression. Right? That's what it means. So the example would be Venus in Leo loves grand romantic gestures, while Mars in Capricorn feels, though, love through providing security and long-term investment. So it's important to note that while love languages can be seen deeply through the placements of the Mars and Venus in the signs, we need to also consider the subtle nuances that are going to be playing out in each of our astrology charts. Like, for instance, there are going to be planetary aspects that are going to modify our love language. So, for instance, you might have Venus in Taurus, as an example, conjunct the Sun. And now you have to consider that it's also going to take on the quality of Venus in Leo, right, because of the Sun. So in addition to the Venus in Taurus qualities, there might need the experience of the need for validation and recognition and warm experience in relationships. Whereas if you take Venus in Libra, for instance, that has the words of affirmation, but it's making a square to Pluto, you're going to need to start considering the implementation and effect of a Plutonian experience, a Scorpio experience that requires more of that deep emotional transparency, emotional connection, and the need for transformation. So you can see here that there's such depth that we can explore and understand about our Mars and Venus placements in our chart and how they are linked with our love languages. But it also actually reveals to us through the more subtle nuances that we have in our chart that it goes beyond that, and that there's so much more to explore and understand about the ways that we naturally show up and feel loved and appreciated in relationships. It is also giving us insight into how we naturally evolve and what types of karmic themes we're here to experience as well. So why do certain relationships feel magnetic and others feel like they're a struggle? This is mainly because when we're looking at our Mars and Venus, we also need to include the aspects that they make towards each other. Aspects play a very big role in the specific unique expression of the Mars and Venus placements. So if we take a look at some common aspects, we can see that there are different ways that Mars and Venus will express themselves and why some relationships will feel magnetic or flowing and others will feel like they're in tension. So the first one that I've got here is the conjunction. Okay, this is when Mars and Venus are either in the same sign and they're very close together. This is the type of pattern that has a lot of chemistry, but can also feel very overpowering. Like there's a consistent state of flooding of both energies all at the same time. The trine or sextile can feel very harmonious, right? very easy flowing, things naturally occur in the way that they do, but it also leans towards stagnation because there's nothing to grow from, because everything's fluid and okay. We've got the square tension between Mars and Venus, right? If you've got this in the synastry chart between yourself and your partner, or you have this natally in your chart anyway, this is kind of like a push-pull dynamic, right? A dynamic tension between one energy wanting to go in one direction and another energy going in a different direction. And what this often actually creates is the psychological tension or need to break apart from an old pattern. So it actually reveals some very strong emotional and psychological growth. Square tensions can often feel very difficult to deal with, or you don't want it. But honestly, it's probably where the most emotional growth and strength comes from. We've got the opposition that takes place, and this is kind of like a mirror effect, right? This is where Mars and Venus in opposition, or you've got this, again, in the synastry chart. And this is kind of like a dynamic tension of powerful attraction. Like, oh, I see something in you, and there's an attraction dynamic. But it also requires a need for conscious balance. One energy in one extreme or the other energy in the other extreme creates an imbalance, and that can be stressful. So an example of how this could play out, right, is if you take a look at, say, Mars in Aries, for instance, squaring Venus in Cancer. The Mars in Aries demands that sense of expressing love and needing that autonomy. And the Venus in Cancer will require more of an internal process of nurturing and safety and the need for reassurance. You can see how this dynamic tension between the need for autonomy and the need to stay sort of close can be at odds with each other. See, when we explore our Mars and Venus at this level, you start to see that there is so much more deeper than what we initially think. And it actually reveals to us, as I said again, so much of the emotional and psychological growth potential that we have in this lifetime. And it reveals to us a more deeper story that we as souls have come to experience ourselves through. Now you can see how Mars and Venus shape our relationship patterns. I mean, imagine being able to understand your love needs and patterns with absolute clarity. Imagine being able to actually understand your partner's needs and have a better alignment with them rather than having the general miscommunications and misunderstandings. I'd love to hear what your love languages are and how they actually fit in with your Mars and Venus placements in your astrology chart. Let me know in the comment section. I'd be interested to hear your take on your understanding of how these themes play out in your life. And don't forget, if you have not signed up for the masterclass, I'm going to leave a link in the description below so you can check that out, because we're going to be exploring these themes on a more deeper level. Until the next video, guys, have an amazing one. Bye.